I was aware that he was ill. He had something that I thought looked like and sounded like flu. That was in the evening between, 8, 9 and till bedtime.
And when was it diagnosed as meningitis?
It wasn't. What happened was that he went to bed and in the morning he was dead. It was that quick because one form of meningitis is called septicemia because the meningitis bacterium enters the bloodstream. And the moment it does that, you only have a few hours before you die. And so he died in his sleep.
Was a vaccination available at that time?
It was only available privately. He hadn't received it as a child. I'm not sure it was available when he was a child because he was 19 by then, or nearly 19. The government hadn't spent the money to do mass vaccination.
So you must be particularly angry at the debate that is surrounding the vaccination against meningitis B at the moment, whose delay is being caused by arguments over a cost-effective price for the manufacturers.
Yes, angry and sad, because what happened in my case was that straight away it was building up, if you like, around the time my son died, that the numbers of cases of people dying, I think it was reaching over 300 a year in Britain. And the Chief Medical Officer of Health in Britain was approached and said, well, why don't you make sure that the vaccine is distributed in the way that you do, widely, universal distribution. And he said he wasn't prepared to be bumped into it. 3 months later, as it happens, he did bring in the vaccination. Now, I sense a very similar attitude going on at the moment. It's worked out, I'm afraid, deaths per pound. They're sitting there going, well, how many deaths are being caused, or in fact not only deaths but also maiming disease, that meningitis, if you survive, you sometimes survive with a lifetime of some form of disability. They're saying, well, how much is this worth? It will cost us X thousands of pounds to universally distribute the vaccine. So they are saying effectively this number of people who are maimed by the illness or die are not worth it yet. There will come a point when it will be worth it. In the meantime, this is the awful bit, is there are people who will die of the illness and alternatively suffer the consequences of having it and surviving. That's the cost that is being worked out at the moment, and some of those people will be in exactly the same situation as I was.
I mean, obviously, way back then, a vaccination against meningitis C would have protected your son, but was there anything else that you could have done at that time? I mean, as you say, the symptoms were not indicative of anything as fatal as it turned out to be.
Broadly speaking, this kind of meningitis, there are two forms of the illness. One is that it just goes to the membrane surrounding the brain, and that's that terrifying and crippling headache and a stiff neck. And people know those symptoms quite well. But the symptoms of the septicemia, they're kind of odd, really. You apparently, I found out afterwards, is that you should, if your child has very, very high temperature, you have to check in their armpits and in their groin to see if there is a kind of red inflammation going on there, because it's sometimes there that the illness first displays itself, when these membranes around the cells are beginning to break down.
I mean, a child's death is probably the most devastating thing that can happen to a parent. It must have been awful at the time.
It was a disaster for me. Eddie was, as all our children are, we hope, a much, much, much loved son. We spent many hours talking and joking, and, he had helped me through some difficult times. And so there was an extra sort of devastation for me in the sense that he had helped me, but I couldn't help him. And when you have these feelings, it's very hard to come to terms with them. And obviously, if you have a sense that even if I couldn't have diagnosed it, well, if only the government had moved quicker on the meningitis C vaccinations, he would have survived. And that's a bitter pill.